Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I'm your host Raider, and today's video is indeed about a tip that could influence how your claim is either won or lost and is very helpful on initial claims and potentially on appeals, supplemental claims, even higher level reviews to maybe to some degree. So, what we're talking about today is that there are two separate types of rating narratives that can be done. Now, the first type of narrative is known as a short form rating narrative. And this is the type of narrative that the majority of you get whenever you get a rating decision. Okay, so what it means is, it's when in those situations where, it'll say, hey, look, you were granted for this, this, and this, and it's pretty short, and it just talks about this is the effective date, this is the theory in which we kind of granted you under, this is your evaluation percentage, and this is the next higher. Now, for granting, the type of narrative doesn't necessarily matter. Where the narratives really, differentiate between each other is when you get into the denials. Now, let me go ahead and share my screen and I'll kind of explain what the short form narrative is, and then I'll go into the second type of rating narrative, which is the long form. And you should honestly watch this entire video, okay? I mean, I'll be going over the manual references, and I will include those in the description, but this is very important, and I'm not just saying that. So here's the manual reference for 541A6A. And like I said beforehand, I'll put all the manual references in the description. So let me read this to you. This is for the short form narrative, right? And the short form narrative does not have to contain the entire explanation of the analysis or specifically cite each piece of evidence. Now, I want you all to take that in for just a second, okay? So, when I issue you a short form narrative, I don't have to explain everything to you. Now, for a grant, that's not so bad, right? Because you just care about the percentage. I mean, the majority of veterans care about the percentage. However, it would be nice to have a full explanation, right? So that way you can tell if you were awarded correctly. Now, they do a pretty good job about when you're awarded that they tell you like each bullet point as to why you were, granted what you were granted. So that's not really the dilemma. The dilemma is when you were denied. So what this says that the short form narrative, I don't have to put all your evidence on the rating decision. I don't have to account for it. You could have submitted 52 separate doctors' appointment, different doctors' clinics. I don't have to list them. I don't have to talk about them. I don't have to account for them in any way, shape, or form. And I don't have to analyze them in any way, shape, or form. And I don't know about you, but it kind of ties the veterans' hands behind their back when they're trying to do a supplemental claim or an appeal, right? Because you weren't given the entire explanation as to why you were denied. So this part says, however, each element, and when we talk about elements, what we mean in the VA speak is element one is current diagnosis. Element two, for the most part, means in service injury or something related to service itself. And element three means chronicity. So all I have to do is talk about that. Like you have a favorable finding. So this is elements are in the favorable finding, but they're also in the reason for denial. So you are missing element one for current diagnosis. You are missing an in-service event. You are missing, there's no nexus between your stuff. We just have to say those things. We don't have to explain those things. And by adequate, it is literally you have this or you don't have this. There is no leeway between the two, like as to how far, what adequate means to me, right? You might have a different interpretation as to what adequate means, but for me, I have a baseline, and our baseline is cookie cutter. I just have to name your condition. Like, so You have a current diagnosis of so and so that was diagnosed at the VA medical center on this date. That's all I have to say, in order to satisfy that I spoke about element one. So the next thing I wanted to show you is I wanted to show you what an example of a short form denial looks like. So that way, we can kind of put it to paper what I'm talking about. So service connection may be granted for a disability that began, this is basically discussing like the theory that we're applying. So whenever I read this, we're going for direct service connection. Then we talk about what the condition is that was denied. Now you will see a lot of times these written in different ways because when the computer, after we get done telling the computer either we're granting and we plug and play all the things that the examiner gave us, or we're denying, it'll blow in this generic language. And then we have our own individual rater templates that we kind of modify it. So that's why you never see two rating decisions the same. But I digress. So, and this is where it's talking about, while your treatment records were so and so, we're talking about the elements. So this is while your service treatment records, element 2, treatment or diagnosis is similar to the claimed condition, we have been informed that you have missed your VA examination. So this is kind of, this is not the best example for what we're talking about because this is a no-show. You missed your examination. And that's going to be an instant denial. But we'll just go with it. And then here's the favorable finding. There was evidence showing a qualifying element 2. So what they're saying up here is we couldn't, because you didn't go to the exam, we couldn't determine whether or not you had a diagnosis. And because we can't tell that you have a diagnosis, there's no way for us to establish a nexus between your conceded in-service event and the thing you didn't attend. Had you attended the exam, we might have been able to do it, is what they're saying. But this one's actually pretty straightforward. But in situations where it's like you did attend the exam and they still came to no conclusion, but they didn't copy and paste the examiner's information in here, one of my tips is to ask for the alternative long form narrative. Okay? And the reason why we care about long form narratives are because you have to explain everything on them. Okay. Now, some of you might have gotten a long form narrative. Typically, they have to be done whenever you do a higher level review. So, higher level reviews should explain the evidence. Sometimes they don't. I have complained about this, but they're supposed to. You will also get, when you get denied for PTSD, they're supposed to do a long form narrative. So, they're supposed to explain, why it is that. Why each piece of evidence, how it counted for you or against you. They're supposed to do an itemized check of it. So when we come down here, adequate analysis in a long form narrative format. Address the decision elements. Okay, so that's pretty similar to, say, a short form narrative. Discuss the evidence that is relevant and necessary to determine, including specific treatment details during and after service. So, okay, you're having to explain, you're having to discuss the relevancy of my evidence and whether or not you determined it relevant. Clearly explain why the evidence is found to be persuasive or unpersuasive. That seems like really valuable information that you would want on appeal. Or if you wanted to do a higher level review. Because if you make the rater go out on a limb and actually say whether or not they found the information to be persuasive or not, then if you did a higher level review, this would be I would be pointing at that particular explanation going, they did not find my private DBQ and medical opinion to be persuasive. And sometimes they might give kind of a lackluster answer. And on a higher level review, I'm pointing and jumping up and down on that going, hey, is that in the manual? Is that is that just their opinion, or it was unpersuasive because of evidence or their feelings? Now, this can have a really big impact on higher level reviews whenever you get a long form narrative analysis, because when raters are unsure, they don't write a lot. Okay? Like a confident rater that is confident in their opinion will write out, hey, look, I found your private DBQ to be insufficient based upon the following information. In box 1, the examiner said this, which directly conflicts with box 12. Okay? I attempted to call the examiner at the phone number listed, so and so and so and so, and I was unable to get in contact with them. I made two, good faith attempts and was unable to get in contact with them. As such, I had to send you for a new examination because I could not reconcile the, conflicting medical evidence, and it was important enough that it get resolved that I had to send you to a new examination. Like that's how I explain them. Like whenever I do the required note, whenever and I'll even write it in the narrative, but I do long form narratives for every single claim that I do. Not every It's not required. It's only required for these instances. TBIs, fraud cases, This is not like I claimed my knee. Nope, not on here. So what I like to do is I like to ask whenever I do a claim submission to actually get, to request that the rater do a long form narrative to help me understand how they came to their conclusion and to get every single bit of my evidence reviewed by them at length. Now, why is this important? Well, sometimes raters top sheet, and when you force them when you put their nose in it in the evidence, and you force them to have to mentally say which side of the fence they're on, it can cause a dilemma for them. Oh, well, that conflicts with this evidence over here. And it can possibly give you a second chance to have, a denial that would be normally short form denial instantly because they don't have to explain themselves. They just go, oh, the examiner said their medical opinion's a negative. Okay, good. I'm just going to I'm just going to follow that. I'm going to take their word for it, and I'm going to deny the veteran with a short form narrative. Well, if you make them do a long form narrative, then what happens is they end up having to actually, go through and reconcile the evidence, weigh it, put it in equipoise. Is it in equipoise? Is there a balance there? Is it out of balance? If it is, I've got to, is it out of balance because the evidence itself is out of balance, or is there conflictions in the evidence? The long form narrative makes us earn our money as a rater. Yes. Does it take longer? Yes. But if do they have to do it? No. But if you ask them nicely to do it and they do it, it can be the difference between a grant and denial. It's like when your leg goes asleep and you move. Having them do a long form narrative is like waking up a leg that's fallen asleep. You make them be engaged with your claim. And in my opinion, there is nothing wrong with that. That is the most ideal frame of mind that you want your rater in, is to be engaged in actively weighing the evidence. Reasons for denial should be based on a review of the available facts and how they relate to the statutory and regulatory requirements for benefits sought. The key facts involved. Now, I just want you to please take a look at how the long form narrative is described, and then I want you to take a look again at how the short form narrative is described. I don't see a lot of, hey, look, you should be doing a thorough review. You should be reviewing this entire thing. You should be doing all this stuff. Like the short form award, the short form denial, like the same amount of attention to detail is not reinforced by the manual towards the short form narrative versus the long form narrative. So, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, if it was my claim, I would be requesting long form narratives in the nicest way humanly possible because it's not mandatory. I would be requesting them because, what we may have asked for but did not receive. Like, this is important. This could be a duty to assist error in the future. Like, these facts that you have to talk to the veteran about as a rater, having this information, like, would you want this information? Ask yourselves each individually, if I was denied, would I want all of the things in 541A7B? Would I want all this information on my rating decision so it can help me put my future supplemental claim or higher level review, so I know what evidence I need to get, so I know what disposition, like what specifically they denied me for? I don't know. You all might not agree with me on this, but for me, this tip right here is one of the best ways, right? Cite both the favorable and unfavorable evidence without partiality, especially when decreasing benefits are, is under consideration. Compare relevant findings at the time of the previous rating with the present findings. So it even tells you that I have to go back in time. If this was a supplemental claim, so like for this part right here in the notes section, especially this right here, what it's referencing is it's saying, like, if you did a supplemental claim and you got a long form narrative on a supplemental claim, I not only have to describe what all the evidence that you have now, but I have to go back in time to your old rating decision, weigh all that evidence, and contrast the two rating decisions and the different evidence. And, I can talk about, like, previously the evidence that we had beforehand was, you had an MRI at the time. It showed that your knee was, currently, disabled. However, the new evidence that you submitted isn't as probative because, like, your knee has actually, under this MRI, resolved. It has gotten better per the, the reading from the radiologist. It says that there is marked improvement. So that is why we are not doing, although the marked improvement doesn't decrease your claim for, say, increase or whatnot, it doesn't show that your condition has actually gotten worse, as you have described in your lay statement on, received on this date. Something like that. Like, that's the level of detail that we should be on a long form narrative describing to you. So, and I know I've kind of rambled about this, but to me, this is a tip that is, this is, nobody hardly knows about the long form narrative, and they don't know that they can ask for them. Now, your next question should be, how do I ask for them? So, with a claim submission, this is a VA form 21 4138, and I just wrote out, hey, to my rater, I respectfully ask that my claim for sleep apnea be evaluated and adjudicated using a long form narrative. The reason why I'm asking for you to apply the long form narrative is to have the evidence evaluated, so in the event of a denial that you explain the value of all the evidence to help me determine how best to appeal. I appreciate your consideration in this matter. Rater HQ. Okay. Respectful, short. You're saying who it's to, so you can say, hey, rater, please do this. Now, they're not obligated to do it, but I always, like, whenever I rate something, it's when nice people get nice things. I mean, if you're a jerk face to me, I'm still going to give you the full measure of my attention. But I'm going to I'm going to bend over backwards for the people that are like, "Hey, look, I just need help. I've tried appealing this 4 times and I can't figure out why you guys keep denying me. Can you do that?" But in summary, so I'm wrapping up the video, but in summary, if you are submitting a private, okay, DBQ and a private medical opinion, at minimum, you should always respectfully be asking for the rater to do a long form narrative. And the reason why is because you're going to force them to have to talk about that private DBQ. With a short form narrative, they can just pretend like it doesn't exist. But when you make them have to talk about it, then they have to say why they invalidated it. And that rationale can be strong, it can be fair, or it can be flimsy. It could be non-existent. Like, they just did it because they didn't think, they don't like private DBQs. So anyway, that's about all I got for you today. I hope that that this video was at least helpful. I mean, to me, I've wanted to put this video out, but I wanted to kind of set a foundational, um, you know, kind of a foundation for the channel of what I'm going to be doing. I don't want to be tips and tricks you guys into the ground, to where because I have a lot of tips and tricks, but for my own claims that are based upon my knowledge and the evidence, but I don't want to be, you know, clickbaity. And this is not clickbaity. I mean, there's meat to this bone, but um, yeah. So I'm gonna sprinkle tips and tricks throughout, and how I rate and stuff like that. So hey, please do the YouTube things. The like, the subscribes if you want to. I mean, if this content it appeals to you, please put a comment below. If I take people's comments into consideration. So, if you think that I could, do something better, or if you want me to do specific content, I'll try. I mean, I'm doing 1 to 2 videos a day already a day, and that's more than most content creators. But I do have a life and a family, so I mean, please be patient with me if I don't get to your video. It's in the queue. So anyway, thank you and have a wonderful day. And Raider out.